I feel like Donald Trump. Maybe not. Hey guys, thank you very much. I haven't been to Belgium for a while, and for those who missed the opportunity when I was meant to come to that last Comic-Con, I'm very sorry about that. It wasn't my intention not to show up at that convention, but things happen. But I'm glad to be back, and thank you. It's always such a huge, I don't know, like we all look for validation in life, you know, we all want to be connected, and one of the greatest honors I have is having worked with some wonderful artists, you know, some wonderful people. Spartacus was such an incredible journey for me. When I think about Andy Whitfield, when I think about, the things that people deserve in life, you know, and sometimes we just don't get it, you know, but for me to sit here and have all of you people coming to listen to my story, I feel very privileged, very honored. I know I put my heart into these characters, but for me to get affirmation for that is to come and sit here and see your faces, because it means that I did something that was worth something. And I think with each of the characters that I've had, I think each of them has a human struggle. And I think that we're connected by story, you know, and I always try to get this feeling out with my acting, you know. I have to say, my acting career didn't start as a young boy just wanting to be in the limelight, you know. To be honest, I lost my mother and my brother when I was 15 years old in a car accident, and that made me want to express myself, or I needed to express myself. So I got involved in music and dancing, and that led me to acting. But when I got onto that ability to be in front of the camera for these great shows in the costumes of these characters, I realized that the only reason I was there was to really open up and allow for the things that make me vulnerable, you know, the things that make me strong or want to be strong. But I always thought that Crixus wasn't the guy that walked out with his big ego in the arena and said, "Shall I begin?" That's not who he wanted to be. He wanted to be that man that was standing at the bars, touching fingers with Navia, feeling like somebody cared about him. You know, Slade Wilson, he started off as the guy on the island that just wanted to look after the kid. You know, but then because of Mirakuru, because of a whole bunch of circumstances that were almost kind of like Shakespearean tragedy stuff, he ended up becoming in this dark place. But I know that the fans of the show, because I built the kind of like the vulnerability of the character early on, then somehow it kept me connected with the audience members. And recently when I came back on the season 6, and I got to walk out of the prison cell and say, "Listen, kid, I remember everything that happened, but the Mirakuru, and it was like a bad dream." All of a sudden they washed it away, and I somehow came back into contact with the audience from a protagonist perspective. So, but anyway, what I'm trying to say is, I try to put feeling into my characters, and the most important thing for me to receive back is this energy of sitting here with so many faces from a different country that I come from, just knowing that I'm connected in some way. So thank you for that connection. It means a lot to me. Cheers.
For some reason, my wife loves you as Crixus. I can't imagine why. Me, not so much. But still, I was wondering, what was the hardest thing for you? Was it acting half naked as Crixus, or in the armor of the other character?
Well, you know, people talk about the nakedness of the show, and I remember the critics gave us such a beat up in the press when we first started the show, because they said it was soft porn, that it was, you know, the nudity was excessive and the blood was excessive, and all of it. I mean, I'd like those critics to have gone sat in the Colosseum and watched Christians being fed to the lions, you know, and the blood that poured when people were buried up to their necks and lions came out and you know, this stuff happened, you know, and we live in a world today where, you know, bombs are going off and people are getting blown to pieces. So we have to actually understand the relevance of the reality of what we are like, what humans are like if we get pushed to a certain place, either whether we're in control and we become advantageous of that, like Caligula or certain rulers in time, you know, or whether we're the victims who become the slaves. So those two parts of the spectrum in Spartacus were explored very well, I believe, over time. You know, my character was given a really great breadth of emotional range, and you know, yeah, I just think that as time went on. And it wasn't even really the popularity of the show because we weren't on a network like HBO. We weren't being promoted with millions and millions of dollars of promotional PR from our network. The only reason Spartacus got popular was because people were downloading it illegally. You know, and like, I don't know, like you know, like I would like to know how these Vikings up in the north of Iceland saw it. I remember being in Iceland. And I was driving around the country and it was like so far away from anywhere. You know, people just hadn't really occupied Iceland yet. It's still one of the most beautiful countries on the planet, I think. And if you get a chance to go, you'll see a culture that really hasn't been changed too much. You know, they're still pretty much in control of their boundaries and their borders and their perimeter and their culture. But when I went driving in Iceland right up to the northern extreme area of Iceland, I found this small town and some person at the hotel said, oh, it was Saturday and I wanted to go to a bar and meet people, you know, I just wanted to meet some locals. And she said, oh, we don't have anything like that here. We have one, there's a room, there's a small building over in the parking lot over there and they have drinks there on a Saturday night, but only from 11 o'clock at night until 1 o'clock in the morning. Oh my God, 6 o'clock. So 11 o'clock that night, I walk over to this small bar and I walk in and there's these giant Icelandic guys with beards and kind of like, you know, it's like a scene from Vikings with like, you know, this Maori boy with like slicked back hair and they're looking at my fashion. I walk in and it was like a Western. Like, and these big guys kind of turned around and they're like, and I felt very unwelcome at first. And then I sort of said to the barman, I said, oh yeah, just, you know, give me a local, have you got a local beer or something? And he was like, I took it on, this is going to be a tough night. This is not going to be easy to make this connect, right? And then one of the guys sort of turns around and he goes, you're not Crixus, are you? And I said, yeah. And he went, Crixus! And all of a sudden these guys, and so the joy of the moment was that I really could have had a very tough night that night and no connection whatsoever, but just because of that role, and so I don't know how these guys watched it up there. They must have illegally downloaded it and watched it at the local aluminium factory, which is the only place that was there. But yeah, so I have, you know, the greatest gift of what I do is that I have this connection. And I so love going around the world and having the opportunity to meet people. I remember writing on my Twitter account that imagine all the people we'll never meet in this world. Imagine all the people you'll never meet. You know, and I wrote this in my Twitter, and I wish I could know the world better. And that was kind of around the time where I was starting to work on Spartacus, and I swear to you, that has been a vehicle for me to get out into the world and see the world a lot more and meet people. And if I have one great payback for what I do, it's that. And anyway, yeah. I don't know how that started and how that ended, but that's the end of what I was about to say. Should we flip over, see if anybody's got some questions?
Yeah. I think we have one of the youngest members in our audience has a question, actually.
Awesome. Hey, kid.
By The Hobbit, did you like playing Arthur, or would you be a dwarf?
are you saying would I prefer or would I play the dwarf as well? As an actor, you know, you have to learn to throw off skin and put on new skin. I mean, at the time, I think Peter Jackson was interested in my performance as Crixus. So I think he needed somebody who could move. What happened was originally on The Hobbit, another actor was given the role of Azog. He was like 7 foot tall, and they put a lot of costuming on him, and they did his face was makeup and prosthetics. And I believe his makeup time alone was 6 hours in the makeup chair every morning. So he'd have to get there at 3 o'clock in the morning, spend 6 hours putting makeup on, get up in this giant suit, and have to go out and do these battle scenes, you know, which would have been very exhausting for him. I think what happened because of that process, potentially the physical side of the performance was reduced because of the difficulty of it, and he couldn't move. Like the stunt guys told me this when I went in there to do it. They were saying, oh, he had such problems with the big costume, and it looked very clumsy and stuff like this. So Peter Jackson actually got into the editing suite. You know what an editing room is, kid? When you've done your movie, you get in there and you watch all the scenes and you decide how to cut the movie into pieces and make the film that you want to bring to the audience. So when Peter Jackson was doing that, he saw the Azog scenes with this big guy kind of going, you know, the prosthetic face. If you remember the orcs in Lord of the Rings, you know, where Lawrence McCorday, who's a very good friend of mine, you know, was the leader of the orcs. When you came in close with the camera, the prosthetics were not that great. They were good, but they weren't that great. And when you came in close, an orc was like, you know. And so, can you imagine, like, if Azog had come out and been like, you know, it's sort of, you know, you don't have all the muscles in your face to create the tone of the character. Unfortunately, makeup isn't quite to that standard to be able to make a face really move. Like, it needs to be when it comes in close. So Peter decided that he would bring me in. He'd seen my audition tape. He went back over the audition tapes and was looking for performance, you know, in the face. And so he said that he went back over the auditions and he thought that I was really intense, and he liked the intensity that I was bringing to the performance. So instead of me having to be 7 foot tall, he filmed me in motion capture and then made that character 7 foot tall. The process was tricky. It wasn't easy. I had to learn black speech, you know, which sounds a little bit like German or something. You know, so you got to kind of work on these. Orc rap. I feel like an orc rapper. But in the end, it was really interesting, kid. I mean, making Azog was like so many more dimensions than just putting on an outfit in my skin and getting in there and make. Like, for instance, like when I went into the studio, they had a big screen that was already showing my figure. I'll go back one bit. When you go in to do motion capture, you get all these little dots put all over your body, this outfit, this tight little outfit you put on. When I went in there to get dressed in that outfit the first time, the guy came in and he said, "These are Andy Serkis's shoes. You and Andy have the same size feet. Do you want to wear them?" And so I actually stepped into Andy Serkis's shoes, the same ones that make Gollum. And then, you know, went in, and what they do is you have to stand in front of a sort of a sensor system and start moving parts of your body, you know, just sort of bending your legs and moving your head around and moving your arms, because you've got all these little dots, and so they pick up all the dots like an X-ray machine. Then when you walk into the performance space, they're filming all of your motion capture, that's what it's called. But you've also got little dots all over your face, and you're wearing this helmet with a GoPro camera. If you move your face, it's going to make all the little details in your face come into that character when they animate it. So when I walked in there and I saw this big screen, there was this, as I was moving, I went, oh, that's me, that's Azog. And Azog was big, you know, he had big muscles and big sort of, big size, you know, big reptile. And as I moved around normally, his big figure was going, you know, so I actually had to sort of walk, like, fill up the space of Azog and be all bar, you know, sort of make the movement bigger and inside the flesh. Like, you could play Arnold Schwarzenegger doing the Mr. Universe final. They could do it with you, kid. And then just put Arnold Schwarzenegger at the top. But you have to inhabit the physical space of Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, which means when you come out, you've got to hold yourself in a certain way and do a whole, you know. So that's the trick to filling the physical side of a character. You know, Andy Serkis was crawling around on the ground, you know, my precious. You know, for him, the bodysuit was probably good. For me, when I was wearing this tight leotard bodysuit, I felt like an idiot when I walked out the first time. And I thought the last guy they saw was 7 foot tall. You know, I'm 5'11", in a little tiny bodysuit, like a little ballet dancer girl, and I walk out and they're like, is this Azog? You know, and then I had to block all of that out of my head and think, stop thinking that you look small or diminutive or whatever. You've got to start thinking you look big. You know, so I used to spend about half an hour in the studio before we started filming, just moving around, just feeling the size of Azog. But one thing that helped me was the night before I watched Jaws. I got Jaws out on video. So I'd seen an image of Azog and I thought he looked a bit like a white shark. And when I watched Jaws, I liked how the scariest parts were when you didn't see the shark. As soon as you saw the shark's teeth and the face, it made you... So what I did with Azog was I hid him a lot. I made him move around like this a lot and kind of look up like this and sort of turn around and then I walked up and I remember this small orc was in front of me. Come up here, kiddo. You can play the small orc. So do you remember in the film, remember in the very first scene, you see Azog, and he's up in a big castle, and the small orc comes and says, Master, they got away. The hobbits, they got away. Remember that? So can you say, Master, the hobbits got away?
Master, the hobbits got away.
And I threw the character into the wolves, and the wolves ate it. But don't be scared, that was just the same. I guess I should have warned him. But yeah. So it was creating this character in his movement and everything, and in his voice. That was really an interesting part of that process. Thanks, kid. Thanks for the question. I hope that answered it. Who's up?
Hi. You said that you got a lot out of the roles that you played. I was wondering if there's any decision yet in your career that you regretted saying no or yes to a certain part?
No, everything sort of happened sequentially so far. You know, all of the roles have been sort of one after the other, and they've been, you know, luckily they've been sort of successful popular culture kind of shows. You know, there was one project that snowboarding, and I was a little bit disappointed because a few things. At the time I had an agent, and it was Tomb Raider 2 with Angelina Jolie. And I went and stayed on an island in New Zealand for like 2 weeks, watching all of Angelina Jolie's movies and thinking, how could I get into this woman's space? Because it was the character was the character that Gerard Butler played. And I remember going to the audition, and I'd spent a day drawing like a centipede tattoo down my arm. And I knew that Angelina Jolie had tattoos, and I kind of, but I just sort of wanted to get a good solid, spending 2 weeks watching all the movies, I inhabited a sort of a space that I thought would be interesting for her. And then I went and did my audition, and I felt so good about it. I felt like I'd done all the preparation that I needed to do to get it right, and that I hit it, that I went in there and I had no fear. I didn't feel nervous. And the casting lady was like, that was so good, New Zealand casting director. And I was like, thank you, I really put my work in. She goes, I'm going to send it away. And I rang up my agent, and I went, oh, darling, I just did the audition, I think it went really well. And my agent at the time said to me, Manu, do you know they're casting all around the world for this role? And I remember this really negative tone. And I remember it sort of like diminishing something in my headspace as well at the time. Anyway, a few months later, I went snowboarding in New Zealand, and it was one of those things where you get that feeling before it happens. And I should have trusted my gut feeling. My gut feeling was, don't do another run. Go with your friends and have lunch. And I went, no, I'm going to do another run. And I went down the hill, and I did this little jump, and I landed, and I put my hand back, and I broke my wrist. I went to the hospital. They fixed it up. They put me in a cast, and then they sent me home. And on the way back, I was driving, and all my friends were going back up to the mountain, and I had a broken wrist, and I was driving along, and I saw these 2 dots falling out of the sky, and it was people skydiving, parachuting. And I went, oh, I wonder if I can parachute. So I drove in there, and I said, oh, look, I just broke my wrist, but can I go up? And they went, yeah, sure. Put someone on your back, and they'll pull the chute. So I went up, and I jumped out, and I remember it was the first time I ever parachuted, and I remember just going, yeah. And I hit the bottom, and I went into the hangar to get my bag, and I felt so elated, and my phone was ringing in the bag, and I pulled out, and it was that agent, and she went, Manu, and she was like breathing like this, and she goes, they just called from London, they want to fly you over to read with Angelina Jolie for Tomb Raider 2. And I remember the first words that came out of my mouth were, I told you. And then I went, oh, I just broke my wrist. And she went, what? And I said, I just broke my wrist. She said, Manu, what? I'm going to have to ring them up and cancel it then. And I said, no, don't do that. Like the doctor said, maybe 6 weeks I could be out of this cast. And anyway, so she rang up, and we sort of said, he's injured himself, but we should be able to take the cast off soon. They bought me, the ticket was like $17,000. It was a first class ticket from Auckland to New Zealand. It was like so expensive. I sat next to some lady, some royal family member or something. She said, what's your name? I was like, Manu. James, this is Manu. Hey guys. It was very top level stuff. Anyway, so I arrived in London, and I met the writer. The writer was like, we really loved what you did in the audition. The writers actually, they loved your performance, And I was like, oh, awesome, thank you. Like I spent time concentrating on her. I said, we could feel that, we feel like you guys would have good chemistry. And then Angelina Jolie came in, can you imagine? I'm like just some kid from New Zealand, and I'm like sitting there, and here's Angelina Jolie, and I was like, I remember in my mind I was going, don't say anything stupid. But she was very gracious girl, very humble. She came into the studio, and she was standing like over at the doorway over there. She walked in, and some people went like pointed toward me, and instead of me, like some actresses, trust me, they expect you to come to them. But she turned around and just walked across, strolled across, and went, hi, I'm Angelina. And I was like, oh, hi. Don't say anything stupid.
We're like that when we're meeting you.
We'll see, there's no point in that stuff. It's just ourselves, questioning ourselves. But anyway, so I went and I actually went. I had a backpack that had straps, really tight straps over the shoulder, and it was it was flat on the back because I could put a script in it. And Angelina was like, "Oh, I love those straps. I love this thing that you're wearing. Can we go up to the costume department?" So we went up to the costume room, and she took my backpack and put it on. And you know how she wears that silver outfit with the guns and everything, but it's got straps around the arms here? That's my backpack. That's my claim to that's all I got out of it. But and then they sent me down to the makeup department and or the wardrobe department, and then in came this guy who was one of the producers, and he said, I've heard you've got an injury. And I said, yeah, I've got this, supposedly the cast can come off soon, but, I'm just trying to sell that story, And he said, well, we're going to have to send you to see an orthopedic surgeon, just because we need to know what's going on. And anyway, so they sent me to London, I got picked up in the next hour, said goodbye to Angelina for the last time. Went to the hospital, this guy took x-rays and he came back and he said, "Where did you get this fixed?" And I said, "Oh, there was two student doctors, I got two student doctors." And they said that they could just try to adjust it and put a thing on, but the guy came back and he said, "You need an operation. You need a bone graft, you need screws put in your wrist, you've been on the plane, it's sort of moved out of alignment. I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to do this film." It was the contract was $1.8 million. It was like somebody got your lotto ticket and just tore it up in your face. I was so gut-wrenched. I can't even tell you how gut-wrenched I was. So terribly gut-wrenched. And anyway, they put me on a plane and flew me home, and that was the end of Tomb Raider, and it was just such a, I don't know, I always thought to myself that maybe my agent had believed that I'd done a good audition and rung them up and he said how did Manu's audition go, because sometimes they give you feedback and they'll say, "Oh, he's in the running," so you're in the running, So many ifs on that one, so many ifs. But that was the only real major disappointment where I thought I was so close to something in huge, career-changing moment. I actually had to go from that moment. I got back and I was really deflated, and I went and worked on a building site, for like 6 months or 8 months. But it was really good. It was great. I'd sort of got together with a bunch of blokes, that had meat pies and smoko at lunch. So they go, "G'day, mate." They used to call me Hollywood. They went, "Hey, Hollywood, you pull on your weight, And I was like, "Yeah." And then my agent rang me, and like 8 months into working on this building site, hauling rocks, and then I was doing labouring, so I was just taking all the mess and emptying it into bins and whatnot. And she rang me, and I remember my agent was ringing me, and she was saying, "Manu, what are you doing?" She's German, Ruth. And I'd say, "I'm digging a hole in the back of the house. I'm digging a hole where the swimming pool's going to go." And then she'd ring up the next week and go, "Manu, are you still digging the hole?" And I said, "Yes, and it's getting deeper." And then one day she rang up and she says, "Manu, we have an opportunity, I think. There's a television show called Spartacus. They want you to read for Ananias." So I went in. No, Barker. Who are Spartacus fans here? No, only a few. Well, I read for like 3 different roles and got rejected on them. So I was like, heartbreaker. And then finally they rang up one time and they said, "Oh, there's a character called Crixus." And I remember my German manager couldn't even pronounce what the name was, She went, "It's Krikas." Krakas. I was like, "What?" Crixus. And anyway, so she set me up for this audition, and that was the role that kind of helped me get a career, on international scale. Anyway, it was great. It was such a great series, by the way. Like, I can't tell you how enjoyable it was to go to that set of Spartacus every day. So many wonderfully creative people, so many dedicated fellas, you know. It was great to get there. The women, I mean, Lucy Lawless, I loved acting with Lucy Lawless. I mean, I've never actually met another actress who is in the zone as much as what she is, you know. She absorbs you, accepts you, plays, it's like a game of chess. It's awesome, yeah. I enjoy both of them, yeah. Sorry, next question.
Yeah, hello, brother.
Shall we begin?
My question is about your sword fighting skills in Spartacus. Do you still use them in the characters you play now?
People ask me that about Arrow because, you see, the thing about New Zealand is we have a different kind of a legislation when it comes to injuries in the workplace. And I know this sounds very just, you know, jargonish for what health regulations are, right? But we have a system in New Zealand where you're not allowed to sue in the workplace. Like if you get an injury, we have a government system called the ACC, Accident Compensation Commission or whatever, something like that. Anyway, so if you get an injury, you get a certain payout based upon what the government assesses your loss to be, right? But you can't sue your producer. In America, if someone spills a coffee on you, you're a millionaire. You know what I mean? Like this, you know, if you fall over and you know, I mean, it's their system is so, you know, people are paranoid about doing anything where somebody might get hurt because of the legislation there, right? Our producers didn't care because there'd never be any return on them. So one of the great things about that was that we got to do all of our fighting, everything, on Spartacus. You know, whereas when I got to Canada, it was very much the system that the stunt would come and they'd go, okay, cut, stunt guys, and I'd be like, can't I hit him? Can't I get in the fight scene? And they were like, no, you got to step off. We've got the stunt guys. And due respect, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I mean, if you do lose somebody off set, it's kind of, you know, it costs money. But for some reason, we trained so hard in Spartacus. That was the good thing. We spent 6 weeks before we started filming, all of the stunt guys together, all of us learning each other's movements. You know, it's like shadow boxing. You know, when you shadow box with somebody in the ring, when you're a boxer, you know, when you know the guys that you're fighting with, you can move and slip and do everything really quickly and effectively because you get used to each other's range and movement. So, you know, we were all very versed with how each person moved. When the new guys came on, that's when it got interesting. And we usually hit them. But the directors didn't really care, you know. But that was, you know, it was so good, Spartacus, in terms of how our performances were so physically expressive as well as emotionally expressive, and it was, you know, I mean, look, I mean, Arrow is a very, very slick machine. Looks, you know, it's polished perfectly, you know, and like when I step out of the fight, like people come up to me and they go, oh, in season 6 when you came in and you had that fight scene and you took out all those guys in that big factory, like that was awesome. I was like, yeah, it wasn't me. I'm like, what? So it looks awesome, you know, it's great. It sells to the audience really well, you know. If you come and you want me to sign a Deathstroke with the mask on and the sword out, photo at my desk, it's not me. I'll sign it for you, but it's not me. I'm just coming in, just letting you know. but you know, look, I mean, for me, Arrow has been like Spartacus. It's been such an interesting character to develop. You know, especially in this last season where they dropped the crazy Mirakuru, all that spin on it, and kind of brought Oliver and Slade back face to face with all that each person had done wrong in the past, kind of pushed aside for a common cause that we both had sons. And that was just a really interesting storyline, and I really enjoyed playing this last season. Thanks to Mark Guggenheim and that team there, they did a really great job bringing Deathstroke back, you know. And now Joe Manganiello is going to do it in the film. which is great, you know. I met Joe, and Joe's a fantastic guy, and he looks great as Slade, you know. And a lot of people ask me the question about, you know, how do I feel about it, you know, and I don't have any feeling about it other than I've had a great opportunity to play the character. And I'm really interested to see how the Deathstroke film will come out as a dynamic, you know, what Joe will find in his grey matter to make Slade Wilson. Slade's a grey matter guy, you know, a lot of grey matter, so it'll be interesting to see what Joe can bring to it. But Joe's a fantastic guy, great actor, done all of his work in Hollywood to get to where he is, all the groundwork, all the series and everything you need to build up to that sort of an opportunity. So I really do wish him as an opportunity for him as an actor, the very best, you know, and hopefully they can make that 90 minutes really meaningful for Deathstroke, you know. We'll see what happens.
Hi, I was wondering if you're a big fan of any movies or TV shows, and if there's a character that you would have loved to play or you would still love to play.
I think one of the pivotal films when I was growing up anyway was The Deer Hunter. You know, it was just such a tapestry of real life, and the music in it was just something haunting. You know, John Williams on guitar playing this song called Cavatina in the middle of a horrific Vietnam War scene. You know, it was the way that movie was blended together really influenced, you know, what I thought of in terms of what acting and filmmaking, good filmmaking is. I mean, I'd like to be involved in something that was just more about society in a certain way, you know, that would be healing, you know, in some way. I think we've sort of got to a point where, you know, film is very influential, I think. I think when they made the movie Crash years ago and it won an Academy Award, that took all cultures and it kind of like tried to find a common denominator with people. I think Spartacus did that in a certain way as well. But we need more of that. We definitely need more of that, you know. We're in a bit of disarray on the planet right now in terms of culture and religion and the integration and how we all live together. So these sorts of, you know, I went to Greece last year, and in Greece they have the very first amphitheatre that was ever built in a place called Epidavros. And it was built by a medicine people called the Asclepios. And the Asclepios built this amphitheatre which has the most incredible acoustics, considering it was like the first one ever built. Like if you ever go to Greece, go to this place called Epidavros, and you'll see what our couches at home have become with the television in front of it. Because the Asclepios figured that if people could stand in the middle, that our voices could be healing, that we could do things and perform things, or we could say things, and people sitting in the audience would lend their ear to it, and if it had connective tissue, then the people would be inspired or moved, you know, and you know, this is what film is now, you know, in every different country, you know. Every different country has its own cultural, you know, television series or its own cultural film network that's going on that tells the stories that are important to those people, but we're becoming so connected and so cramped in that we need more stories that encompass everybody and make us face a kind of a global kind of story. You know, I've gotten to a point, actually, I'm at a point in my career where I'm kind of like thinking, you know, because they send me scripts now where I could play a terrorist or I could play the next tough guy kind of thing, but I kind of really want to find a script that's about healing, you know. I think you know, playing Crixus, there was healing in that for men. I mean, I had guys that come from like Afghanistan, who were you know, Marines and these special forces guys that have come to conventions in America, and they come up and they've got you know, they've got PTSD, and then they've walked up to me and they've gone like, and they've stood at my table and they've started to cry, and I'm just sitting there trying to figure out what this moment is, right? And they're looking at me going, you know, I was in the hills in Afghanistan and I lost half my unit, and my brothers died at my, you know, at my hands, but I just want to tell you, we watched Spartacus and it helped us get through some of those moments. And what they're talking about is they're watching some sort of a semblance of some sort of story which has, you know, a band of brothers working together and people are dying and stuff like that. So they identify with it in some way. And, you know, when Crixus was in there in the arena but then struggling to touch the hand of his loved one, that narrative was healing for them. While they're sat in this bunker in the hills of Afghanistan getting shot at. And I couldn't relate to it because I'm not a soldier and I didn't stand there in the real battlefront, you know, with bullets whizzing around my head. I did lose my brother and my mother when I was young, and I think that the emotional capacity of having my brother died in my hands, you know, so I had that to give as an artist. And that's what I do try to give. You know, there were moments when Crixus, I just took all of this pain that I had from the loss of my mother and brother and let it roar out, you know what I mean? And at that moment, I think that those guys who were sitting in Afghanistan sat there going like, whoa, that's what I feel like. I feel like yelling out that because I'm my brother, you know, death and how I want to live my life. I'm stuck, you know, and you know. So there's parts of my performance that I know, you know, I'm trying to go back to that Epidavros thing in Greece and just be in there to that screen and just give off an emotional signal, you know, committed, so that it can get out there, you know. Anyway, yeah. It's probably my ambition to do film that's got a little bit more healing quality to it, and rather than, you know, I mean, a lot of people go, oh, you play Deathstroke and Crixus and oh, tough guy, yeah. But I don't think they're saying hello to me for that reason. I think they're saying hello to me because of the stuff that goes underneath. And that's what I'm most proud of with those characters, is the vulnerability, not the sword swinging and the action and the killing and all that sort of stuff. I'm actually not for that at all. But I'd like to show how a man, whether it be Deathstroke or Slade Wilson or Crixus, has to face that because of whatever necessity or being forced to. But then he realizes the wrong in it and tries to come to terms with humanity, his humanity. You know, that's a struggle that's a story worth telling. And so I like those roles.
Wow. I'm afraid that's all we have time for.
Oh,
Please, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Manu Bennett!
thank you. Thank you very much.